The podcast you're about to hear is part of the Polish-Scottish Heritage Project, as one of its many productions which aim to promote a greater awareness of Poland and Scotland's shared heritage. We hope that it encourages you personally to look into the stories of the places, events and people that shape the history we are privileged to share.
Well, I was born in England of Polish refugees. They ended up in England not because they didn't want to be in Poland, but because of the political situation, and they were not able to go back. I mean, their history is very interesting as well, but we won't go into that just now. So I was brought up speaking Polish at home, and I went to school at the age of 5, not knowing any English, but learned very quickly. My father claimed that it would be better, that children fared better if they spoke their original language at home and then learnt the proper English at school, you know, and they had no problems with keeping the two languages. And my father was very keen for us to retain our Polish culture as well as learning the English. At the beginning, I think we felt a certain amount of animosity towards us as Polish people. I remember certain not very pleasant conversations when we were out, children with my mother on a trip, and some English ladies were very annoyed that we spoke Polish, and sometimes there were even kind of abusive words directed to us, I won't say what they were, so that was sort of one thing. I think the feeling of being kind of refugees or children of refugees in this country and never being completely sure whether we were safe stayed with me for many years. Knowing the history of peoples like the Poles and like the White Russians who were here before the war and then for political reasons were sent back and slaughtered in Russia, and also the treachery of Yalta. One was never quite sure, even though the Poles were allies, whether they would remain welcome in this country. But over the years, I think that has passed, and at the moment I feel a citizen of this country. I'm happy to be a citizen of this country, but with Polish, with the Polish culture as well. And I think my husband would agree with me that we've tried to retain the best of the Polish culture and learn, the best of the British culture. Yeah. So I don't know whether you want to add something to that, Stefan.
Yes, as far as animosity was concerned, I probably didn't feel as much of that because, in a sense, we were in a ghetto. That's how it all started, really. We were so isolated from the Scottish side. You could actually go in Edinburgh and go about your business with just Polish people. There were doctors, there were dentists, there was everybody. Shops, the whole lot was like that. But that didn't mean that we became insular or were somehow cut off. I didn't ever feel cut off. But in time, as we grew into the Scottish culture, there were times where we would have to assert ourselves as being Polish, and I think some of our friends wanted to assimilate with the local culture too quickly, and therefore did a disservice to the Polish culture. And I think it's very important that children that are brought up here know who they are, because there's a syndrome which someone tried to explain to us, being children of Polish immigrants or other immigrants in the Scottish or British culture. You're neither here nor there, and therefore you feel like a third, almost like a third culture. And that is something we probably feel to this very day, that we are a third culture.
Yes.
We're Polish, yes, and we can hold our own in Polish, the Polish language, the Polish traditions, and we are Scottish or English, and we can hold our own in the Scottish English traditions. Therefore, we are neither one nor the other, or both. I don't know which way is best to describe it. But there is something, that there is a third kind of element here.
I would agree with that. We feel the most sort of understanding with people who are the same as us. In other words, second generation Poles here. We have a very sort of
A rapport.
a rapport, yes. I mean, we even feel different to the Polish people who come from Poland now. We feel they're a different, slightly different culture, and we get on well with them. But we feel we're like, a group, set apart, and probably our children will be as well. The third generation Poles born here will also be, a group set apart. But as Stefan mentioned, it doesn't mean that we can't integrate well with everybody. And as far as
Well, certainly from a food point of view, we can integrate very well.
oh yes,
And we can choose the best of both sides.
yes, that's right. And as far as culture is concerned, well, we love the Polish culture. It is very rich. It is very colourful. I mean, Stefan was the leader of a Polish folk song and dance ensemble for many years. I took part in it as well and helped him. We made costumes. We imported some items of costume for Poland, and we had shows.
Would you mind if I asked you whether you had any Scottish, British or English
Very much so. I know what
colleagues,
you're going to
friends
say.
in that
Oh
in that
yes,
folk group?
yes.
Yeah?
They were most. If we didn't rely on our Scottish friends, there wouldn't be a group. So it was very well populated with Scottish people
It was really
who
quite-
even felt more Polish than some of the Poles.
Yes, it was really quite funny because we at one point during the evolution of this group, we made a record, and in the recording studios, of course there were those who had the Polish accent when they were singing, and there was those who had the Scottish accent, and the word słyszeliście came out as słyszeliście, which wasn't exactly the kind of words we wanted to have on the record. So from that point of view, we had to rearrange the choir in such a way that these people were slightly further away from the microphones. But it was certainly an incredible...
Yes. And we had shows, sort of amateur shows all over. Sort of women's group would ask us, and so we were
in the Scottish
in the Scottish
societies, yeah.
society and Churchill Theatre and everything. And so we had a kind of a contingent of Scottish followers who would always come to our shows, and international shows as well. We went along with Dunedin, a dance group, to Belgium,
Edinburgh University dance group.
Germany, the international folk festivals. So we took part in those as well.
How did the group start?
It started, it was really our family, because my sister she was training to be a ballet dancer, and at the time, and at the same time there was a man here who's no longer with us, called Mr. Vavro, who is very, very keen that we should start something like that. And
in your youth group, because you had a youth
in my youth, yes, we had a youth club in the Polish club. And when the Polish millennium came in 1966, yeah,
yes,
that's right, 1966, such a long time ago, It's they had a millennium ball. And at that millennium ball, they were wanting to have some Polish dancing. So who better than to take people out of what was then the Polish school and the Polish club and see if we could create something. So he was in touch with a choreographer in Kraków, Zbigniew Pieńkowski, who was a choreographer of the AGH folk group Krakowiacy. And he came across and virtually did a lot of the choreography. So I did some of it then. I was just starting as a choreographer, and I based my knowledge on a book. You can't learn dancing from a book. So some of the steps which I produced were caricatures rather of what Polish dancing should look like, especially the Mazur. When we showed him how we did the Mazur, he was dumbfounded. I suppose that's the only way we could put it. But he put us right. I remember in Kraków with my sister dancing around this floor for hours on end. He's going, yes, that's it. Oh, no, that's not it. Oh yes, yes, you've got that one on. And this went on for a couple of days until we finally learned to dance. So that's how the group really started. It was a mixture of the millennium and the Millennium Ball. And what happened after that was the same person who organised the Millennium Ball then organised harvest festivals, Przynosimy plon in Polish and all the rest of it. And the group went from strength to strength. The first costumes we had were probably black trousers and white shirts and a red ribbon. But after that, my wife here.
Well, I studied in London, and I belonged to a Polish folk song and dance ensemble led by Olga Żeromska, a very sort of artistic lady who did amateur dramatics as well. And so I sort of was I loved the Polish dancing. It was just so exciting, and so when I came up here, of course, we worked together, and I was a keen sewer as well. My mother was a seamstress, partly other things, and so I just sort of learnt from her, and I loved making the costumes. So sort of we researched all the books, to get them authentic, not the sort of kind of sugary stuff you get normally, so that the costumes were authentic. And we visited Poland many times to look at what the groups there had, and so we've actually accumulated several sets of costumes from different regions of Poland, probably about 8 when they all together now. They're all stored away safely in a place at the moment, because basically we couldn't carry on with the group because of many other commitments, but we hope one day it will start up again.
There's an interesting story also with Edinburgh Castle here.
Yes, very interesting.
Because when we went to research, we watched Mazurka, and we actually copied a lot of their choreography. Just took its lock, stock and barrel. Yes, I'm proud of it because I did it well actually. So what happened here was we became a mini Mazurka in a sense, but Mazurka had this thing that they did all the regions of Poland. There weren't just one, and we called ourselves Ojczyzna, which meant that we did all the regions of Poland.
Yes.
And when we wanted to do the Lancers uniform, Uwani, Mazurka had a sort of red frontage. We wanted to be different, but we wanted to be authentic. And what we found, to our great amazement, was in the castle, Edinburgh Castle, there was a guy there who
Mr. Thornton,
who wrote a book on
Lancers.
Well, it was Napoleonic uniforms, and amongst them
for the Polish
the Polish Lancers.
Was the gentleman Scottish?
Yes, he was Scottish, and actually, yes, and he gave us information.
And he actually liaised with Warsaw, the museum in Warsaw, the Army Museum in Warsaw, and he wrote on the basis of all that information. So when we went to ask him about what this costume, it wasn't a costume, what the uniform meant, and how all the bits, he knew absolutely everything.
And it was funny because initially we approached the Sikorski Institute in London to give us information, and they weren't able to. And yet we found it on our doorstep in the Edinburgh Castle with Mr. Thornton. So it was quite amazing. But afterwards, I'll just interject here that there was a sort of Scottish-Polish gentleman here, our generation, but Scottish-Polish born, who was very interested in the Polish army history here, and collected a lot of memorabilia and uniforms and things, and wanted to place them safely somewhere. And he managed to liaise with Edinburgh Castle, and these mementos were all passed on to the museum in Edinburgh Castle. And for 3 years there was an exhibition where the Polish war sort of memorabilia things were exponated, were shown, and they are there. They're safely there, so that this history won't be lost.
Yes, and in Edinburgh we found a wealth of the appropriate talent, because there were a lot of, especially one gentleman who was a professional tailor, and he actually made those costumes.
The basics. We did all the finishing off.
We had to read all the. It was a very, very interesting logistic experience, because to get all the correct braids and all the rest of it. We had to go to all the shops around, well, Edinburgh for sure. Because we didn't have, for example, when the same person was making costumes from Łowicz, and because we didn't have the actual woven material with the stripes in it, we actually had stripes sewn on, but we had to get them the right shape, the right size. So the amount of research that went in was quite substantial.
As far as the women's costumes are concerned, this was before my time. You went to a Scottish woolen mill, showed them the pattern, and they made yards and yards and yards of material. So it's not quite the same as the Polish Łowicz. It's a bit darker, because I think it was woven on a black thread rather than a white,
I'll tell you what it was.
Thread. But we have our own brand of Łowicz.
The Łowicz costume, the kilts are woven on a black thread, whereas the Polish costume material should have been woven on a white thread, and we forgot to tell them. So it's slightly darker than it should be. So it's a Polish Edinburgh Łowicz costume, you know, special brand. But it does the job, and it's very effective. And a lot of the mothers and everybody else were doing the embroidery and the sewing, because there was so much embroidery. At that time we had, I don't know, 30, 20, with the choir as well, there must have been about 20, 30 ladies who needed to have costumes. So it was quite a mammoth task.
Yes, yes. There was one Scottish lady in particular who was a very good seamstress, and she did a lot of the embroidery and helped me tremendously with sewing the costumes.
Yes, she and her husband.
We took them to Poland once to, show them, around the sites and
they were looking for the Sipilia shops everywhere.
Yes.
As they put it.
This project would not have been possible without the support of our sponsors, including the Consulate General of the Republic of Poland in Edinburgh, and the enthusiasm and hard work of our project